It is Friday, October the 5th, and this is The Drill. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. So, the Kavanaugh all the time. Every time I turn the station on, it's all about Kavanaugh and whether or not he's getting confirmed and the predictions on how many votes he's going to get and on and on and on. So, but the interesting thing is that the Republicans saw this coming. They saw this obstructionist situation coming. Before Kavanaugh was brought in for his confirmation hearing and all that, many of the pundits, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, there's a whole slew of them, were all saying this is going to be the biggest anal exam ever. This is going to make the Clarence Thomas situation look reasonable by comparison, et cetera, et cetera. And you figure if the pundits know that this is going to be the case, then the Republican senators, Mitch McConnell and Mr. Grassley, know that this is going to be the case as well, that the left is going to bring out all their guns in order to try to sink the nomination of Mr. Kavanaugh, and that they would be prepared for it. And that's the thing that I marvel about, is that it seems as though so many of the same people that said, I predict this, I predict that, are now acting surprised. Oh, I can't believe it. The Democrats stooped this low. I can't believe they went this sleazy. They became this ugly about it. Well, you predicted it, so how can you be surprised about it? The Senate seems to be stunned and surprised at what's going on and what's coming from the left. How could they be? Where have they been? Have they been hibernating? Have they been asleep for the past 6 or 10 weeks? And so the Republicans knew about this. They have claimed that they see it coming, and yet they did nothing to prepare for it. They were again caught flat-footed and are caught in a position where they end up having to react rather than act. And now at the end, Mitch McConnell has finally said enough is enough. We're going to have a vote. It's going to happen this week, and it looks like it's going to happen tomorrow. So they filed for cloture yesterday. Has to be 2 days before they can vote, so they'll be able to vote on the nomination tomorrow. And much to Grassley's credit, he got the nomination out of his committee and moved to the full Senate last week. So, but it's still, again, the fact that they knew this was going to happen, yet acted like they never saw it coming, is fascinating. I think that may be a function of political theater, that they probably knew it's coming, but they want to be able to act like they're stunned, because it's much better for fundraising. Sending out the fundraising letters saying, oh, these evil, rascally Democrats are doing hideous things. You better send us more money. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to vote in November. So, like I said, so a lot of political theater going on. And point is that the Republicans saw this coming and or claimed they predicted this, should have seen it coming, and should not have been caught flat-footed. They should have been prepared for this. So when I come back, a little bit of a quote, or a little clip of Rush Limbaugh from yesterday's show. Thank you very much. And so I have a clip from the RushLimbaugh.com via his app, the Rush Limbaugh app. And so this is a clip. It's called Predictable Democrats.
We predicted that the Democrats wouldn't be satisfied with what they asked for. They asked for an additional week of FBI investigation. They got it. Immediately after getting it, they said a week wouldn't be long enough. Then we predicted that whatever the FBI comes back and says, the Democrats are going to say it's tainted because they didn't do a
So, again, with the predictions, the problem, and this is again problems with making predictions. If they don't come true, you look like a fool. If they do come true, and you act surprised that they did come true, you look like a fool. Also, making predictions is about getting around and getting away from making value statements. Making a prediction is a metaphysical kind of thing, or it's a reality thing. It may be man-made reality. You may be predicting man-made realities, or maybe you're predicting metaphysical realities, but it has nothing to do with ethics, what should happen. That's what's important. That's what should have been done here. That's what Rush Limbaugh should have done and should be doing, and the rest of the pundits should have done and should be doing, is saying what should happen. What is it the Democrats should do? They find themselves in the position where they can't stop this nomination, and a lot of their they may end up using laws that they have championed for a long time, may end up getting challenged before the Supreme Court and may end up being overturned. So I don't think Roe v. Wade would be one of them, but even that's a possibility. So the Democrats are, of course, they don't want that to happen. So they figure if they can stop this nomination, then and at least put it off until after the election, win some seats in the Senate, and then I guess everything will be much better. But the point is, what should they do instead? And what they should do is take a good hard look at themselves. They've been losing elections since 2008. 2008, Barack Obama won election in the presidency, and then in 2010, the Democrats lost because they had a majority in both houses, in the Senate and in the House, for 2 years. 2010, then they lost the House. In 2012, they lost the Senate, although they did reelect Barack Obama president. And they've been losing ever since. They've been losing state houses, governorships. They've been losing across the country, culminating in the loss, of course, in 2016 to Donald Trump. So it's what they should be doing is taking a good hard look at themselves, a good hard look at what it is that they're promoting, and ask themselves, maybe admit to themselves that what they're trying to promote, nobody wants. Okay, not enough people really want whatever it is that you're pushing. You're pushing socialism and you're not getting elected. Maybe it's time to say, socialism sucks. Socialism is no good. We're not going to promote it anymore. Let the Socialist Party of America, that political party, let them promote socialism, and we'll go back to promoting democracy. We'll go back to being true Democrats and promote democracy. And the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans wouldn't be as pronounced as it is now, but more Democrats would end up getting elected, and everything there'd be a whole heck of a lot less acrimony, a less gratuitous gridlock. Gridlock isn't necessarily bad if it's done because there's legitimate differences in terms of what people think is best for the country. If it's gridlocked strictly for politics' sake, for the sake of getting past an election, so that you can perhaps change the political landscape, that's different. That's absolutely wrong. So, but again, take a good hard look at themselves, which they had done back, I believe, in 1994. They were swept out of office, and Democrats said, "Okay, we got the message," and they changed the way they were doing things. They changed the way what it is that the way they were acting. They changed their tactics in terms of their political campaigns. They changed their tone. Now it seems that every time they lose, they just get more determined to try to force themselves on the country. The country won't accept them voluntarily. Then the Democrats have decided that they will force themselves on the country. And that's the same, and I say that that's what the Democrats should do. It's the same thing that the Republicans should do. If the Republicans find themselves out of power, you don't come back and try and they shouldn't force themselves on the people of the United States. What they do is they say, okay, why not? What is it that we're doing wrong? What is it about? It might be rhetorical, just the way you're putting your message across, or it might be the message itself, that nobody's interested in what you have to say. And in which case you've got to change your message or accept the fact that for a time being, you're going to be a minority party. And the same thing that the Democrats should do. And Rush Limbaugh and his friends should be pointing this out. What I'm telling you now is what Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity should be doing as well. They should be pointing out what should be happening and skip the predictions. So we'll be back in a minute. All right, the Ayn Rand lexicon, and the entry for today is choreographer. Dancers are performing artists. Music is the primary work they perform with the help of an important intermediary, the choreographer. His creative task is similar to that of a stage director, but carries a more demanding responsibility. A stage director translates a primary work, a play, into physical action. A choreographer has to translate a primary work, a composition of sounds, into another medium, into a composition of movements, and create a structured, integrated work, a dance. This task is so difficult and its aesthetically qualified practitioners so rare that the dance has always been slow in its development and extremely vulnerable. Today, it is all but extinct. So, like I said, the Ayn Rand lexicon, dealing with concepts and abstractions. The left today culturally wants us to communicate by telling stories and painting verbal pictures. And so I like to go to the Ayn Rand lexicon, among other things, to remind people that concepts are as much about reality as anything physical, because the materialists will tell you that the only thing that is real is that which you can touch and feel, your emotions, the table in front of you, etc., but it's not true. Concepts are as much part of reality as are things that are material. When I come back, a little bit, it's going to be, I'm going to read from the 10 books that screwed up the world. Okay, thank you very much. And the 10 books that screwed up the world, and the first one he's dealing with is called The Prince by Machiavelli. And the author was making the point when we left this about the way that Machiavelli deals with good and evil. And the last part of it was about tissue from aborted fetuses was being used as in creation of a beauty cream. And the last sentence, Russian women can rejuvenate their skin with fetal cosmetics. Sounds pretty disgusting to me, but whatever. So on with it. But to return to Machiavelli, our point is this: to embrace the notion that it is not only permissible, but also laudable to do evil, so that good might come. One must reject God, the soul, and the afterlife. That is just what Machiavelli did, and that is the ultimate effect of his counsel. Here it might be objected that Machiavelli appeared to be religious in his writings, casting out pious phrases here and there, and speaking with a certain respect, however strained and peculiar, about things religious. So it is argued, because he appears to be religious, then we must give him the benefit of the doubt. It is difficult for me to deal with all this too common objection, because it shows a frightening woodenness to the obvious, let alone to the subtle, in Machiavelli. Did he not just tell us how important it is to appear to be religious? Who informed us of the necessity, if one is to be a great prince, of being a great pretender and dissembler? Who contrives to be a greater prince, the temporal ruler of a piece of land, or the philosopher who seeks to inform all future princes to found an entirely new philosophy? And so we repeat, Machiavelli could not give advice to princes that would mean abandoning any notion of God, the immortal soul, and the afterlife if he himself had not already abandoned all three. That is why he can call evil good and good evil. This is seen clearly in the famous chapter 15. Machiavelli tells the reader quite matter-of-factly that he is departing from the way all others have spoken about good and evil. He will deal with the real world and how people act in real republics and principalities. While many have imagined republics and principalities that have never been seen or known to exist in truth, we realists shouldn't take our sights from mere fantasy. We cannot guide our lives by what is good, or at least what is called good. Machiavelli warns us, we must guide our lives by what is effective. Quote, for a man who wants to make a profession of good in all regards must come to ruin among so many that are not good. Hence, it is necessary to a prince, if he wants to maintain himself, to learn to be able to be not good, and to use this and not use it according to necessity, unquote. In reality versus the imagination, Machiavelli chooses realpolitik. But where are these imaginary republics he so strenuously rejects? One would be in Plato's Republic, in which Socrates argues that human beings must strive above all to be good. Another would be in Cicero's On the Republic, which he argues much the same thing. But Machiavelli's most important rejection is that of the Christian notion of heaven. He makes this rejection quite clear elsewhere, in his discourses on Livy, when he argues that the prospect of heaven ruins our attempt to make this life, our only real life, better. Christianity, Machiavelli contends, focuses our energy on an imaginary kingdom in the sky, and thereby turns us away from making the real world a peaceful, comfortable, even quite pleasurable home. Moreover, Christianity ties our hands by moral rules, backed up by the imaginary stick and carrot of hell and heaven, so that we cannot do the necessary dirty work. Machiavelli thereby initiates the great conflict between modern secularism and Christianity that largely defines the next 500 years of Western history. And in this respect, The Prince shows its mark in all the rest of the books we will examine. So, and the next one is going to be called Discourse on Method by René Descartes, a so-called philosopher that I have a particular contempt for. But on this one, on the Machiavelli stuff, I learned a lot of good stuff out of this particular chapter. I didn't know that he had his views on Christianity, and I had a good idea about he seemed to have a might makes right and the ends justify the means attitude, that seemed to be the theme of his book. And it was a kind of how to get away with it kind of a book, almost like you get to see books on revenge, how to get revenge on somebody, that kind of thing. So the same kind of thing here. So when I come back, maybe a couple of jokes from the New York City Cab Drivers Joke Book. Okay, thank you very much. Let me see where we at here. Let's see. Okay, let's go with this one. A teacher announces to her class, "Children, the student who can name the greatest man who ever lived will win this shiny red apple." Immediately, an Italian boy raises his hand. "Yes, Tony." "Christopher Columbus," says Tony. "Well," says the teacher, "Christopher Columbus is a very great man, but he wasn't the greatest man who ever lived." Right away, a little English girl raises her hand. "Yes, Martha." "Winston Churchill," says the little girl. "Well, no," says the teacher. "Although Winston Churchill was indeed a very great man, he wasn't the greatest who ever lived." From the back of the room, little Bernie Goldstein raises his hand. "Yes, Bernie." Bernie stands up and says, "Jesus Christ." "That is correct, Bernie," says the teacher. "Come up and collect your apple." When Bernie gets up to the front of the room, the teacher hands him the apple. "You know, Bernie," she says, "given the fact that you're Jewish, I'm surprised you said that Jesus was the greatest man who ever lived." "Well, actually," says Bernie, "I do think Moses was the greater man, but business is business." What does a dog do that a man steps into? Plants. Two men are out camping. They're sleeping in their tent when one of them cries out in pain. The other man wakes up just in time to see a deadly poisonous snake slithering out of the tent. That snake just bit me right on the cock, says the man. Hurry, run, call the doctor, and see what we should do. Without a moment's hesitation, the other man springs from the tent and runs 2 miles through the woods to a campsite where there's a payphone. He calls a doctor, and though he is totally out of breath, he manages to, in gasps, to tell the doctor what has happened. What should I do, Doc? Doctor says, listen carefully. You must go back to your friend with a razor blade, cut an X on the spot where the snake bit him. Then suck out the venom, but do it quickly or your friend will die. The man runs 2 miles back through the tent, through the forest, and arrives at the tent. His friend looks up at him anxiously and says, what did the doctor say? The man tells him, you're going to die. And on that note, we come to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time, have a great day.